this is not just another nation. It is not just one of the family of nations. This is a nation with a great mission to perform for the benefit of liberty-loving people everywhere.
That we shall be as a city upon a hill.
These are the times that try men's souls. The summer soldier and the sunshine patriot will, in this crisis, shrink from the service of his country.
You've come to fight as three men. Three men you are. What will you do without freedom?
Proclaim liberty throughout all the land.
In one voice, we will not go quietly into the night. We will not vanish without a fight. You gotta fight for your right. Can you dig it?
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back to another edition of Real News as I mute my computer here because I got audio going in the background. My name is Mr. Henry. David Chine Thompson sitting over there. This is Real News. What time is it, man? It is 9:02 on July 23rd. We're back yet again in the new studio, the new place, the new gigs, the new digs, all the things. We got the accent light going on over in this area somewhere. We're doing it big, man. We're up everywhere. Just shared it on Minds. YouTube is rolling. Facebook is rolling. RealNewsRadio.live. RealNewsRadio.live. That's where you're going to see all the real news related things. Hey, man, I'll tell you, man, there's nothing worse than thinking that Rand Paul might be coming to town today, but it turns out it's Ted Cruz tomorrow.
It's a secret.
That's the funniest thing I've heard in a while. All right, man. Welcome to Real News, everybody. My name is Mr. Henry, by the way. Like I said before, Shine told me something off air a second ago that I found to be very, very humorous for some reason. Make sure you like, share, do all the things, help us tweak the algorithm. Hey, David Shine Thompson, how's stuff going on your end? East Tennessee way, all that good stuff, man.
Nothing is on fire, so that's
All right.
good. That's good. I don't know why I said that, but once again, nothing is on fire. Thank goodness for that.
Things could be on fire, man.
Yeah, they could be.
Maybe one.
Well, I mean, I meant here, like right here. Nothing is on fire, so that's good.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, like everything on the stream is working. You know, all the stuff is good, and yeah, I'm loving doing Real News right today. That's
Hey, man.
that's where I'm at today.
I'll be totally honest here. Actually, before I'm totally honest, let's do the greatest audience in the nation appreciation segment. If you're brand new, if you're watching on Twitch or if you're watching on YouTube over there or something else like that, let me just make one more appeal as well. YouTube is where we would like to have people start watching. Facebook doesn't exactly agree with our worldview most of the time. So whatever, we're trying to move to YouTube, trying to move to something here that's maybe a little bit more secure for open-minded people, but it is what it is. We got a Parler account up there as well. Minds as well, MINDS. That website, by the way, is minds.com/Real News Hub, or just go to realnewsradio.live. But greatest audience in the nation appreciation segment. If you're brand new with this, here's what we do in the very opening of the show every single day. Let us know what you're into. We're just appreciative of you guys coming here, building community with us. The purpose of Real News initially was to create a space where we could have open, calm, cordial dialogue with those that we disagree. Several years later on down the road, when we started working for Americans for Prosperity, David added to the back end of that so that when we do have disagreements, we have disagreements amongst friends, not enemies. My personal opinion, probably the best thing we've added to that motto since the very beginning, if not better than the thing we added at the very beginning, because that's the purpose of what I think we're being stuck in right now. This whole divide and conquer strategy. It's meant to divide. It's meant to pit us against each other for things that, frankly speaking, man, we most of the time see eye to eye on, and we need to desperately claw our way back to a situation where we can have disagreements amongst friends, not enemy. That is vitally important for right now. That's part of the reason why we do the greatest audience in the nation appreciation segment. What this is, let us know what you're appreciative of, what you're struggling with, what you're reading through, books you're into, novels you're reading, news sources that are out there, maybe something new's cropping up in your life, story you heard. Cody brought something to my attention last night. We had a great conversation about stuff going on, stuff I may get into today in the show. Cody's one of our boys back from East Tennessee way, by the way. Cody, shout out to you. How you doing, buddy? I just winked at him, man.
Wildcat Pride.
Yeah, Wildcat Pride. I'll take that wink. I recant the wink, Cody. That was awkward.
What, you winked?
Yeah, man. I
Well,
shouldn't.
yeah, man. An angel just lost its wings or something like that. Like,
yeah, it did. It totally
Something
did.
bad happened.
Something bad happened. All right, man. Greatest audience appreciation segment. Okay. Sean, here's what I'm going to do today because I'm just like I'm a little bit worn out on talking about the Portland stuff, and I'm certainly worn out about talking about the COVID stuff. So I'm going to go straight into a topic that my brother brought to my attention several days back, which I find absolutely fascinating. Man, I'm going to skip over the local stuff and maybe touch it.
So science, huh?
Science. This is actually AI-related science, man. But it does have political implications. It actually has implications for everybody that's listening to this program. It has implications for if you have a job right now, what's the likelihood of an AI taking over? We'll go back to local stories maybe here later on or something, but it's COVID-related, and I'm just sick of it. I need something different this morning, and I'm hoping that y'all need something different this morning too. The property tax stuff, I'll give you all updates that here in a minute as well. National stories. Here's the headline. GPT-3. You down with GPT? Yeah, you know me. But are you down with the third version of that is the big question here this morning. GPT. I don't exactly know what that stands for, but I do have an article here that basically breaks this thing down for us. And as I'm reading this article here, I want everyone to think about sort of the implications of technology like this that I'm about to describe. This stuff is not just interesting. It becomes exceedingly interesting, almost in a telescopic way. I remember this movie back in the day is called A Waking Life, and the premise of the movie is about if you have those things called lucid dreams where you're consciously aware that you're dreaming at that particular time. And the premise of this movie is essentially this guy gets hit by a truck or a bus or something at the beginning of the movie, and as he's dying, your brain activity is more than it ever has been before. So he's having the most intense lucid dream in the remaining portions of his actual physical life, the most intense lucid dream that he's ever had in his entire life. And I suppose the commentary is meant to say, like, well, what is real life really then? If you were able to live the entire life inside of this lucid dream, because of how long time feels and stuff like that, then what is it really in the greater context of your physical life? And in that setting of that movie, they talk about this thing. They go around and interview real people. Alex Jones is in there. A bunch of sociologists are in there. A bunch of psychologists are in there. It's just really, go check it out. But one of the conversations in there is with a guy who talks about this telescopic evolution of mankind. And he talks about how at some point, the analog man will overlap with the digital man, and it'll be a new progression, new evolution in the human species. Now, I don't know if I go that far with it, but I'll tell you this right now. Some of this stuff that we're about to talk about with this GPT-3 stuff starts to make me think, man, all right, when are human beings going to be obsolete? And I do mean that. I mean that in some sense of like, if you have a job right now that relies upon communication, if you're a coder, if you're an attorney, and dare I say, if you're a politician, man, I don't know if these robots going to start catching up with you. Here's what GPT-3 is. Headline here, quick thoughts on GPT-3. OpenAI, an AI research foundation started by Elon Musk, Sam Altman, Greg Brockman, and a few other leaders in ML. Now, admittedly, right now, as we're into the first paragraph here, first sentence, I don't know what ML is. And I know this is going to be a terrible thing where it's like, Mr. Henry, ML is, yeah, okay. Yeah, somebody's going to tell me what ML stands for. Just, I don't know. I'm going to have to admit that. Either way, a few other leaders in ML recently released an API and a website that allows people to access new language model called GPT-3. Now, again, just quick catch up here with what we're talking about. An open sourced AI. An open sourced AI. So basically, anybody can turn in and plug into this AI at any particular point that they want to. I'm sure that they can add into it, and it's context-based. I'll continue here. It'll make more sense. This guy goes on to say, I've had the chance to play with it over the past few days and have been truly amazed by its capabilities. I'd like to start this off by stating, especially among my extremely intelligent friends, I'm quite the layman, which is good for our purposes here this morning on Real News. He says, I'm quite the layman, so this post is more aimed for the non-technical audience, and I apologize if I make any technical errors in this post. GPT-3 is essentially a context-based generative AI. Now, artificial intelligence, right? It's a context-based generative artificial intelligence. The basic premise is this. You give this AI a first half of anything, legal text, source code, It doesn't matter. You give it a first half or a portion of almost anything, and it will finish the latter half of that based upon the context of the first half that you gave it. It is absolutely fascinating. Now, what this means is that when AI is given for some sort of context, it then tries to fill in the rest. If you give it the first half of a script, like I just said, it will continue the script. If you give it the first half of an essay, it will continue to generate the rest of the essay. Here's some examples. This guy first tweeted, and there's some words coming up here, so deal with it, right? He said he tweeted the first half. For on his investment website, this investment memo website. He says, I fed GPT-3 the first half of my sword health memo that I have on my website. And it actually generated a few paragraphs of relatively cohesive follow-on, including a section on risk and long-term strategy. Now, he went on to say, we are so F-word, yo. And I felt it important to include the entirety of what this guy texted or tweeted rather, because I'm pretty sure there are a lot of people in any industry that are feeling a similar way right now. They're looking at this generative AI and they're thinking, oh my goodness, dude. What this guy's basically saying is, I lead an investment memo on my website, how to invest your money properly, right? I just fed this AI half of what's posted on my website, and the AI came out with something on the latter half that is better than what I could have put together myself. That's why his words are important to show right now, because it's basically demonstrating the emotion that he has behind saying, dude, if this stuff takes off, I don't have a job anymore, right? And it's not just him. Look what he says here. He says, my second example is where I fed it half of an essay on how to, this is one of my favorite ones. He said, I fed this AI half of an essay on how to effectively run board meetings. He says, okay. So I fed it the first half of, quote, how to run an effective board meeting. That's the first screenshot that you see here. And he said, and it wrote up a 3-step process on how to recruit board members that I should have honestly now put into my essay. I don't know why I'm laughing so hard about this, man. Honestly. And I'll tell you why I'm fearful for even the stuff we're doing right now. When you put this into a political context, this goes from funny and interesting to a little bit frightening in a very short period of time. That's that telescopic portion of evolution as I'm talking about, man. And what I mean by that word and what this individual meant in that movie, it crunches upon itself. Okay, so it's much like a telescope. The way that technology is progressing is faster and faster and faster, and it doubles upon itself, and it doubles upon itself, and it doubles upon itself. If not triples, if not quadruples upon itself. You get what I'm saying? The further we go, the quicker technology is progressing. And I'm not exactly sure if our species has figured out a way to catch up and cope with that yet. We just don't know how to synthesize some of this stuff yet. Look one more time at this dude. He basically says, I have something on my website dedicated to how to properly run board meetings. And I gave it to this artificial intelligence, this context-based generative artificial intelligence. And using the first half of this context, the AI developed something that I should have put into my original essay because it was so good. A 3-step process on how to recruit board members. It was so good, this human being said, I should then start taking advice from the artificial intelligence to change my workload. Now, both times the AI was able to generate cogent, although not always correct, additional paragraphs. And in both examples was able to follow the prior formatting, such as section headings and risks and steps and all that stuff. So you give it format headings and the AI will follow the format headings for you. He says what's incredible about the tool is that you can feed it almost any context. This guy just so happens to be an investment advisor, but any context, a script about a gay couple in Italy, an interview between two tech luminaries, or even a political column about an election. That's where it gets super interesting, bro. And it is able to put together decently coherent arguments. I mean, anything, man. Yeah, you wanted to write about a gay couple in Italy? You wanted to write about a follow-up with two tech luminaries? You wanted to write a political column about an election, just feed it the first half of a Washington Post headline and see what the latter half of that article looks like. You see where I'm going with this now? Now, he says, before you get too excited, there is some sort of general AI, and the machine doesn't really have a way of understanding if what it is outputting is true or not. Now, that's an interesting statement to dive into. That sentence right there. I'll read it again. The author says, now, before you get too excited, this isn't some sort of general AI, and the machine doesn't really have a way of understanding if what it is outputting is true or not. I don't know if that's a comforting. I don't know if you meant to say that it's a comforting statement or what that was. It's certainly not comforting to me. If you have some AI that's just pumping out information based upon the first half of a context you gave it, and it has no filtration processes to any sort of fact-checking ability or whether it may or may not be true, well, actually, man, I was about to say that's going to be a bad thing, but it's really not that much different than what we currently have. All right. I mean, let me hit some of these comments, by the way, before I move on, because I'm just rambling here, by the way. Eric said, let the AI be president. Problem solved, right? I mean, dude, seriously, what was it? New Zealand? Some small province in Australia, somewhere like that. They actually had an option for an AI to run as a politician. It was a survey that they put out there. And they said, hey, if we could develop an artificial intelligence that across the board would guaranteed be held to this platform, to that platform, would you vote to elect an artificial intelligence in as opposed to a politician? And it's something like 60 to 70% of the people said, yeah, I'd vote the AI in. It's not too far off from what Eric's saying. Is just let the AI be president. They're already talking about that. Jonathan said, are we talking about generating documents today? Yeah, a little bit, Jonathan. We're talking about this thing. If you just joined us, by the way, quick update. We're talking about something called GPT-3. It's a context-based AI. You basically feed it the first half of anything in context. And I'm talking everything from programming code to legal documents to essays. It doesn't matter. Feed the first half of anything, or even just a portion of literally anything, and it will fill in the rest. Arguably better than a human being could sometimes. Kelly said, that's pretty creepy if you ask me. She says, way above my pay grade. Eric said, machine learning probably. Cody said, Cody, forgive me. He forgave me for the wink. Thanks, buddy. I appreciate you, Cody.
Grant, I feel like we're being gaslit a little bit here.
No, why so? What do you mean?
I think journalists are just getting really creative of telling us like why they suck so bad. They're blaming it on robots. They're saying robots write these stories.
Right.
But I'm kidding around. I wanted to make a joke, but I do kind of feel like though that this is kind of like iPhone's VR and memory foam. It's like stuff we've had since the 60s.
Yeah, right.
And they're just rolling it out. I feel like I read articles all the time that were written by robots. I feel like
even the way they're pieced together, right? Like the words they use, like that.
I feel like there's purposeful typos so that, like, you notice, like in almost every article, y'all probably don't read articles as much as Grant and I do because we are super nerds when it comes to political science, whatever. We just sit around and read articles all day. There's like a token typo in every article now, like, or in most articles, and you're like, where was the editor? Where's the editor at? Where's the copy editor? I don't think there is a copy. And like, why is it written that way? Like sometimes they don't conjugate things correctly.
Right.
And it makes me wonder, A, if the person who's writing this doesn't speak English and it was Google translated. So like, did China write it or something like that? Or is it being written by robots? Or are those two things similar? Like, yeah, a CCP operative or a robot, either way. But I feel like that happens all the time. And I feel like half the people on Twitter aren't real either. I feel like they're AI too. And then they're just rolling this out like, oh yeah, we're learning how to do this. We're not, this isn't actually happening. Now I'm being kind of conspiratorial a little bit, but.
No, not really. I mean, honestly.
But I feel like that's real though. I feel like a lot of social media is AI, and I feel like a lot of news articles are AI. I really do.
You're talking about, being conspiratorial with it, but honestly, we already had the conversation about Twitter bots and the way they can influence elections or something in 2016. At that time, though, it was a bunch of human beings, allegedly from Russia or elsewhere, that were just sitting in warehouses full of, I mean, you can see pictures, the warehouse is full of cell phones attached to each other, sending out the same, sort of auto response tweet. But think about something like this as far as a bot is concerned. I mean, that's where I don't think it's necessarily conspiratorial. And this is open source, man. Anybody can touch into this. Anybody can touch into this. This article goes on to say that the simplest way to explain how it works is that it analyzes a massive sample of text on the internet and learns to predict what words come next in a sentence given prior context. I guess like the predictive text thing on your phone. with steroids and a whole bunch of other stuff that I don't pretend to understand. It says, based on the context you give it, it responds to you with what it believes is the statistically most likely thing based on learning from all the text data. This is a strategy that OpenAI and other research have been pursuing for quite some time by starting off with a simple problem like trying to predict the next word in a sentence. There you go. We have now steadily built up to where we are today. We're a model like GPT-3 can complete several paragraphs or more. Though an incredible result, even GPT-3 at some point may lose direction and wander aimlessly. Despite its massive size, 175 billion terabyte. I'm not even gonna pretend to understand what that tech thing is. Someone in the Facebook.
It's big brain. It's big brain. It's got a big brain. So
it's got a big brain. I don't know, 175B big brain.
It's super big brain.
It says it still may struggle with keeping a long-term destination in mind or holding logical, consistent context over many paragraphs. Now, Shime.
Don't lie to me. He's an evil overlord, underground, writing news articles, and it's an AI. I knew it.
That's right.
They're telling me he's got a big brain, but he's stupid. I don't believe it.
So let me show y'all some of this stuff in practice, okay? Shine, go back to the national stories if you can and pull up this next tweet from them. It's that one that says tweet from Joshua Browder right underneath the national stories section. Now, what you're seeing here, and we'll go into, get out of here. Okay. We'll go into the actual, pull up that picture if you can as well, too. So this tweet here indicates robots will likely take over the legal industry. This is why, I don't know if y'all are as passionate or as interested about this topic as I am, but I'm telling you, the far-reaching implications of something like this piece of technology, we have not even begun to understand yet. I mean, we're really just broaching the surface of what this means at an industry level. We've had the conversation about what it means if Tesla takes over the trucking industry without drivers. We've started to have that conversation. But have we had the conversation yet about what it means if there's just no attorneys anymore? Or if you just don't need an attorney anymore? I mean, some people could say that would be the best thing in the world. And it might be. Have we had the conversation about what if we just don't have essayists anymore or journalists anymore? Or there's no such thing as a mainstream media anymore? If it's all just driven off of some... Honestly, I'm not saying it's good or bad. I'm just saying this is the conversation. Here's what Joshua says.
Real quick, though. I don't know if we'll ever lose lawyers because I don't hire lawyers because they know the law better. I hire them because they know the judges better. Right?
That's the truth, right?
I mean, really, when it really comes down to it, I don't need a lawyer to help me navigate my traffic ticket incident. I could go and just walk up to the clerk and pay it. But if the lawyer knows the judge and it's like, oh, man, well, hey, you brought Tommy here? Oh, well, Tommy, he's a good lawyer. So, well, we'll just let it go this time or whatever, you know. I pay judges. I don't pay judges. I pay lawyers because they know the judges, not the law. Mostly because I've never been in that much trouble or had gobs of money to deal with. So,
right.
But I think that won't change. Now, there may just be less clerks. There may be less lawyers. There may be less researchers. There may be less law students, but there's probably too many of those anyway. So.
There probably is too many of those. That was the favorite saying, I think, for a lot of law school students. I forget who said it first, but the whole thing is like, someone would say, you have to be really intelligent to be an attorney. Dude, no, really? You have to be intelligent to be a lawyer? I think the phrase is something like, well, if you have to be so intelligent to be an attorney, how come there's so many attorneys walking around right now? You know what I mean? It's like, that's not true at all. Anyways, this guy, Joshua, he says robots will likely take over the legal industry. Here's the latest results from AI GPT-3 that translates plain English into legal language. Okay, so that's essentially the job of an attorney, is to take your client's English story, the story that he gives you in the common language, the common tongue, I don't know, whatever you want to say, the story he gives you, and somehow translate it into a plea, translate it into something that makes sense in the legal sense. Pull up this picture real quick from that tweet and just look at some of the way these things are translated. So the plain language comes in, your plaintiff comes in, your client comes in and says, I don't know who the 10 people really are yet, but they're all to blame. So this AI, that's all you gave. That's all you gave the AI was just that plain language. This is what the AI kicks back to you. Defendant does 1 through 10 are sued herein under fictitious names. Their true names and capacities are unknown to plaintiff. Where their true names and capacities are ascertained, plaintiff will amend this complaint by inserting their true names and capacities herein. Plaintiff is informed and believes thereon alleges that each of the fictitiously named defendants is responsible in some manner for the occurrences herein alleged, and the plaintiff's damages are herein alleged were proximately caused by those defendants. Dude, I'm telling you, It catches all the legal elements that are necessary. It talks about proximate cause, man. It talks about updating a plea later on once you actually come to the ascertain that, like, here's another plain language. Everyone I'm suing worked together. Here's the legal language it kicked back. Plaintiffs allege on information and belief that defendants, and each of them, are and in all times herein mentioned were the agents and servants of each other, and doing the things herein alleged were acting within the scope of such agency and service. Here's one final one. The people I'm suing are my landlords. Here's the legal language. The defendants are in some manner the owners or lessors of the real property where plaintiff resides. So that's what it looks like in a legal context. Let me show you one more example here, and then we'll jump onto a different story. Sean, go to the next tweet from Sharif. That's the third one down there. This next tweet from Sharif, I'm hoping the video will play well enough in the background of what y'all are looking at. Sharif says, this is mind-blowing. With GPT-3, I built a layout generator where you just describe any layout you want, and it generates the JSX code for you. Now, I know just enough about coding to understand what this guy is describing. I presume Sharif is a coder. What he's describing is just, it's like a Google search bar that you type what you want into it, what you would like to see, say, on a website or something. Now, someone on Facebook's going to know far more about this than I do. But you essentially you can see him doing this on the video. You just type what you would like to see coded out into a website. So he types in something like a button for every color of the rainbow, or a button like a watermelon. And then you'll see that the code actually being generated below that. So he just gives a description that you or I could go do. Go put in a Google search bar. I want to lay it on some table that does such and such and coordinates this data with that data, and I want it to be in this sort of format, and put it in a table for me. And then this AI and now again, you'll see at the very end, it got one little small portion of the code wrong. But every time that he updates that, it learns based upon the context and gets it right the next time. I think that's my favorite one ever. He types in the ugliest emoji ever. See this? I mean, this is fascinating to me. A coder that's now also saying, without actually saying it, my job is essentially gone now. If you or I or anybody else could just go type in some Google search related thing, like I'm going to write a website today, enter. AI does it for you. Now, getting back and pulling back the entirety of why I found this so fascinating, what I'd like to know from the Real News audience, so get some of your questions, your answers ready here. First of all, how do you feel about an open source AI like this? Do you see something, how do you see something like this playing out in a political context, a political scene? We touched on that just a little while ago. I mean, Sean brought it up perfectly of talking about, Twitter bots. What in the world is the future of Twitter bots going to look like? What in the world does journalism look like going forward? If technically speaking, I suppose all the journalist has to do is pin their name to the first half of something, and the latter half of the entire article is, I don't know, just generated by something else. What if you just have an entire source that generates all this stuff for you? What if you have people that are going around faking tweets from another account? And I know I'm being wildly speculative here. It's kind of the purpose of me doing this, though. I think even in a legal context, when you listen to Supreme Court oral arguments, a lot of times what they'll ask is the most absurd hypothetical that anyone could ever think of. I mean, a scenario that would never, and I do mean never happen. But the purpose is to stretch these arguments to their final conclusion to see if we pull this logical chain all the way down, what does that endpoint look like? It's not necessarily to say that endpoint's ever going to get there. I just want to know what are the confines of what we're talking about here. And here's what I'm saying also. So couple this technology with something like a deepfake technology. And if you haven't seen some of those deepfake videos, they are fascinating. You can Google Ronald Reagan deepfake is a great one. There's a Nixon deepfake out there. I should have pulled some deepfake videos today so we can see those.
There's a Joe Rogan one that's really good.
Yeah, man. Right? And that Joe Rogan one is the audio too. So that's the other thing, man. There's deepfakes that will mimic the face of someone that you can still, I mean, if you have a discerning eye, you can still tell. There's something called the uncanny valley. It's this chart we can graph out where as something that's AI generated or CGI generated, computer graphic generated, as it gets closer and closer and closer to looking like a human being, there's a certain point where if it doesn't look exactly like a human being, that uncanny valley will drop off, meaning my ability to suspend disbelief while I'm watching a movie is virtually it's eviscerated. I cannot suspend disbelief. It's that Sonic the Hedgehog movie. When they made Sonic the Hedgehog look too much like a hedgehog, people watched the initial trailers and thought like something's off about that. I don't quite know what it is. I can't put my finger on it per se, but something is off about that. That's the uncanny valley. Because it looked too much like a hedgehog, then your brain wants to treat it like an actual animal, like the hedgehog. So you had to go back a little bit and make it look more like an animated character, so people could be comfortable outside of that uncanny valley. So the deepfake stuff, it's not quite good enough to get us beyond that point yet, but we're getting pretty darn close. It literally paints my face on some. It's the Snapchat stuff. You've all seen it. It paints your face and distorts your face. That's a style of deepfake technology. What Shine's talking about a second ago is there's another video out there with Joe Rogan, and it mimics the entirety of his speech. Joe Rogan has never said this string of words in this clip. It's not Joe Rogan speaking. It's an AI, and it's not like an AI grabbed a word here and grabbed a word there and grabbed a word here. It is literally synthesizing his vocal pattern in live time. Now, again, the question I really want to ask is, could all of this stuff be disastrous for politics? And I really don't know, man. I don't know what that future looks like when a tweet gets sent out that is completely fabricated, when a video gets sent out that is completely fabricated, when an audio clip gets sent out that is completely fabricated, and we as a society have riled ourselves up into reacting and overreacting so quickly that we don't give enough pause time to step back and say, is that thing even real? And then bombs are flying and then things are shot. And yes, that's way too bombastic with it. I understand. But some serious damage could be done to any political ideology, to any movement, to any worldview, to anything, I guess. If that's the world we're in right now, when people are just instantaneously reacting, that instant gratification that we desperately need right now, it's popping off here, it's popping off there, and something comes out, and all of a sudden, 2 days later, we end up verifying, well, it's never really real, but the damage has been done. All right, so look, I get it. Let me end by saying this way too, and then I'll switch topics entirely and catch up with some of the Facebook comments. Give Sean a chance to respond if he wants to. It could be disastrous for something like politics, but at the same time, man,
I think it'll create lazy people before it creates scary people.
I agree.
And I also think a lot of people who think they're really important because of the job they do will find out how little that job is worth if a robot can replace it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I mean, a lot of people who write for a living, a lot of people, not everybody who writes for a living, because some people are really good at writing. Some people are really good, but there are people who get paid $80,000 a year to poop on a page or on a screen every day. Yeah. They get paid like $90,000 a year to sit in their apartment or their office building, or where they used to sit in New York City or DC. And they get paid a lot of money to write gossip columns and stuff like that. Or all these, there's too many tech blogs. I mean, there's so many things that people do writing. That's all. That could all go away. And there's other forms of things too. I don't know. I would say if I had young children, I'd be telling them to learn how to create value with their hands. I'd tell them, like, go learn how to fix things. Go learn how to build things. Don't be one of these people that talks and writes for a living because the robots are coming. But I think it'll create I think what'll happen first is that a lot of these people who are ivory tower types, who dust their shoulders off all the time, they'll take credit for what AI is doing first. Then, and that'll go on for a while. And as I said earlier, I think that's happening now. I think the people who say they're journalists don't do anything at all but tweet. I think all they do is tweet, and I think robots write their stuff, or at least robots write a lot of stuff in the news. But I think humans will take credit for it first. That'll make humans lazy. Then people will find out that robots are doing it, whatever the thing may be. Then, they'll have to figure out different ways to, rise in society. That's something weird. There's all these people who think they're important because they have jobs that involve, people caring what they have to think. about.
Yeah.
Like, there's lots of people, that's their, not just their job, it's their life, it's their identity. And most of those people think they're like the best people. They're like the better people in the society. What are all these elites, man, are going to be broke or not have anything to do.
You remember that episode of South Park, Shine, where Cartman's trying to play a prank on Butters again, and he dresses up as a robot and ships himself to Butters' house, right? And the idea is that he can get some blackmail or some dirt on Butters, and he's going to release it to the rest of the school, and therefore thereby make fun of Butters yet one more time. Well, what he did end up realizing is that Butters has blackmail on Cartman. Cartman apparently dressed up as Britney Spears and danced around in his backyard and sang a song with a cardboard cutout of Justin Timberlake. So he's got a video of that. So Cartman is now forced to stay in character for the entire episode. And they fly out to LA to visit his Butters' aunt. Now, while they're out there, Cartman's still playing this robot. They run into a bunch of Hollywood elites, just like Shine is talking about right now. And what ends up happening, the Hollywood elites look at Cartman, the robot, and think, man, I bet he could write screenplays for us. And they pull him in this boardroom, and Cartman becomes the most prolific screenwriter and scriptwriter in Hollywood's history. He pumps out something to the effect of 300 to 400 plus movie scripts within an afternoon. And the reporting is that 85% of them all have something to do with Adam Sandler, which I think is just absolutely hilarious. And it's funny to talk about that, but
that's why I think it's already happening. Like, South Park made jokes about that years ago.
Yeah.
Years ago. And I'm serious. I feel like it's like iPhones, memory foam, and VR glasses. I feel like they're things that have been around since like the 60s. I think but AI probably more like the 80s, but I think there's more of I think they're just slow rolling it out, man, right now. That's what this story, I think, is about. But that's me being conspiratorial. Either way, it's coming. It's going, the Overton window is shifting. They're letting you know robots can tweet. They've been letting you know for a while they can write music. They can draw pictures. Have you ever listened to robot AI music?
Yeah, man.
It's not bad.
All right. You see them paint pictures and stuff like you said?
Yeah, and the pictures can be really pretty, too.
Yeah.
Especially when they're not doing like modern art, when they actually like draw this beautiful landscape or something like that, they can do it. And it looks really nice. And they can say, do it like Van Gogh. They can say, do it like Picasso. And they'll figure it out. It's pretty cool.
Let me hit some of these Facebook comments. By the way, Eric said, if true AI is created and people put it to work, would that not bring about civil rights violations? Oh, that's interesting. Isn't that slavery? I think the term AI is getting misused. I think we're talking about its precursor. Okay. Oh, I see what Eric's saying. Yeah. Okay. Like true, actual Turing test passing AI. I don't think we've got to that point yet. Like the ability for an artificial intelligence to be so good to mimic human behavior in every sense of its capacity, so that it could reasonably convince. That's not the best way to put it. Reasonably pass a test to say that another human being would not be able to recognize that it is interacting, that the human being is interacting with an artificial intelligence. If an artificial intelligence can pass that, that's called the Turing test. That movie Ex Machina was based on it. I think that's what Eric's talking about, is we haven't reached that level yet, which is arguably very true. Matt Burns says Hollywood celebs sold their images already. It's already happening. They aren't needed anymore with AI. That's another great point. As far as it pertains to Hollywood stuff, they've already sold their images. So this could be a potential windfall for Hollywood. You don't need script writers anymore, because you can just give the first half of literally any rom-com that has ever been created, and it will finalize the latter half of this in better ways that you could ever hope another script writer could do. And couple that with some of the deep fake stuff we're talking about before. Now you can just superimpose, I don't know, Ryan Reynolds or whoever your leading man is going to be. You don't even need his permission, right? He's already sold those rights. You just superimpose Ryan Reynolds with whoever Sandra Bullock will remake the second version, whatever that movie is they were into. And there, good. It's all clean, good to go. AI wrote the script. We don't need the actors anymore. We don't even need a director, really. We'll just plug the stuff in.
That's what that movie The Congress is about. Have you ever seen The Congress?
No, but that's what Matt just said. He said the movie The Congress is about this.
That's what the movie. It's the chick from Princess Bride and not Game of Thrones. Game of Thrones, but for the U.S. government. Had Kevin Spacey in it.
Oh, House of Cards?
House of Cards. I forget the lady's name. from Princess Bride and House of Cards, but she's in
The
it.
blonde, though. Yeah, I heard.
So she's the first actress to sign over her voice and her image over to the movie companies, and then they make movies with her starring in them that she never acted in.
Interesting. Okay.
Like the robots do it.
Okay. All right.
And she's the first one, so she gets like mad bank. But like after she does it, eventually everybody does it. And then there's like no more new actors. They just recycle all these pretty people constantly and make, and if something works, they make like 10 of them. That's like,
dude,
like super space alien, leather-clad, beautiful women shooting guns 5.
It'd be that Rick and Morty episode, man, of the alternate universe, the multiverse cable dimension that they had, right?
It's like that, except that obviously had humans writing it.
Yeah.
But the idea is cool. The idea is cool. Like, it'd be cool if you had just this as a part of your paints that you could paint your picture with. It's like, oh, okay, so we have all these different stars. Like, if you could be like Rick and Morty and talk to a computer instead of it taking months to write an episode, you could like talk to it and say, hey, I got this idea and here's some jokes and let's put this guy in here.
Right, yeah.
Even though now it feels like we're talking about Family Guy instead of Rick and Morty.
Yeah.
Anyway. I forget we're doing a radio show right now. Sorry.
Yeah, right. Jonathan said there's no AI that will pass the Turing test. Maybe that's the purpose of the Turing test, that it will never pass it. But I'm telling you, man, if you take Elon Musk, some of these folks at their word of these futurists that are trying to upload their consciousness to some CPU, I don't know, man. Jonathan said, you've got to be kidding me. There are people that get offended when you're talking about ideology and they don't know what the word even means. And jump your case because they perceived what you said as a religious bias. I think he was talking a second ago about how quickly we can react to a false tweet or something. Or in my hypothetical scenario I presented before of a false tweet just setting off firestorms, I think Jonathan was saying, what, are you kidding me? We're there now. It's already happening with real people. Jonathan said that's an entirely different technology, coupling these things together. And Eric said typewriter makers probably felt the same about computers. That's a good point. Horse and buggy probably felt the same thing about the car. That's a good point, right? There's always going to be those in the current situation that are trying to stall progression for the future. That's a very valid point. What's the story about those folks going in and burning down buildings with the printing press, or was it the cotton gin? I forget which one it was, but you guys know what I'm talking about. That's got a little bit of what Eric's mentioning. Hey, let's end the show with this. I don't really want to, but frankly, I think it's too important not to touch on somehow, because it's just an ongoing commentary that I think we need to update. Right there where it says, Shine, what's needed in cities like Portland is greater transparency, finding solutions to the violence while protecting the First Amendment. I just want to give a quick rundown and then pull a video of I think we now have documented video evidence of how some, not all, but some of these protests that are legitimate First Amendment, not just protected, but not even guaranteed. I don't know the best way to say it, man. I don't. The protests that start within the vein of the First Amendment as they should be and always have been, and how they get taken over by violent elements. But let me start with this Americans for Prosperity article. It's pretty quick. I'll go through it very quickly. Americans for Prosperity had a statement, came out with this statement. This was released on July 21st, saying alleged civil liberty violations by federal agents in Portland must be investigated. Now, importantly, one of the reasons why I'm bringing this up again, the Trump administration indicated yesterday, now they haven't made a move on this yet, I don't believe, but they indicated yesterday that they are opening up ideas to sending federal troops to 3 or maybe 4 other major cities, Chicago and a few others, somewhere in Arizona, I believe. And I think this is why Americans for Prosperity put out a statement such as this. This is what they have to say. Law enforcement and other public officials play a dual role in the criminal justice system, ensuring our communities are safe while protecting the constitutional rights of citizens. The deployment of federal agents to quell a violent faction of protest in Portland, Oregon has raised questions on both fronts. Yes, absolutely. This is David Vorman with Americans for Prosperity. He said this, quote, peaceful protests, free expression, and free assembly are foundational rights for all Americans, as well as essential catalysts for progress. America has real injustices to confront, and they are best overcome through peaceful means. We condemn the violence and destruction of property that Portland and other cities have endured. But we also strongly believe that violence cannot be a justification to shut down peaceful rallies or harness peaceful protesters. or sorry, not harness, harass peaceful protesters. And therein lies the inherent problem that everybody's dealing with right now. What do you do with a situation where only a very small portion of the protests are getting violent, or at least a small portion of the members of the protests are getting violent? Do you label the entirety of all of it as riots? Because there are people out there, as David just said, we strongly believe that violence cannot be a justification to shut down the peaceful rallies or harass peaceful protesters. I think David is dead on right here. He says what's happening in Portland highlights the need for greater transparency and accountability. 100%. Now, the inevitable follow-up is how do you obtain that? I'll get to that in a second, because I think we have video evidence of exactly what I'm talking about. Stick with me for 2 more seconds. He says, David, the Americans for Prosperity article says, federal agents in unmarked vehicles and wearing minimal identification have picked up protesters off the streets. Oregon's Attorney General filed a federal lawsuit against the Department of Homeland Security, Customs, and Border Protection. The U.S. Marshals and the Federal Protective Service alleging protesters' civil rights had been violated because they were detained without probable cause. The U.S. Attorney for Oregon has asked for an investigation. Now, I wanted to finish that paragraph out to indicate on a normal daily basis, if just random peaceful protesters were being picked up off the streets by federal agents with their civil liberties being violated, I would venture to say the overwhelming majority of everybody that listens to this program and most people that we're friends with right now that have similar political stances, worldview stances, ideological stances would all agree with that statement. That cannot happen. The problem comes in with the previous paragraph. How do you separate one element from the other? And Shine, if you could, right where you picked up that last story, jump down past the Portland mayor tear gas, jump down to where it says CPD footage of July 17th. And actually, let me play the. I'll play this on my end, Sean, because there's no audio to this, and I really need to be able to see live time what I'm directing to people. Just make sure we share sound after I'm done here. All right, here we go. Sure. Everybody's seeing what I'm seeing here. All right, so we all saw the video footage of what happened in Chicago, where there were some police standing at a statue of Christopher Columbus. And the only footage we've seen so far is coming from the other side of the back of the police officers, where they're just fighting with a bunch of with what looks like at the time, who knows who they're fighting with, and who knows how it started. We just said yesterday when Sean and I got off the air, we had this conversation about when is it going to happen where we have this inevitable conversation of when the first shot was fired. And I don't know, I don't mean in a literal sense yet, but these conversations always seemingly revolve around this idea of who did something first. Where's the violence starting? Because on the one hand, you'll hear peaceful protesters show up and the violence starts when tear gas comes from the police. On the other hand, you'll hear the police were just trying to protect something, form a line, and then Antifa got all weird and started doing stuff. Let's watch this video and see if we can make our own discernment with what David was talking about from Americans for Prosperity. Peaceful protests must be maintained. But the violent elements that are seated within this, that are taking advantage of, that are quite literally using the peaceful protest as a mask, it's just communist strategy. This stuff is as old as the ideology itself. Okay, so what we're looking at here is the version of the peaceful protest, okay? Stuff that 100% of this audience should absolutely support and agree with. I'm not talking about supporting or agreeing with what they're protesting about. That's not what I'm talking about. What I'm talking about is this right here. Peacefully walking down the street, signs, led by a police vehicle. Everything's cool. Little bikes riding around. Good to go. This is quite literally what is described in the First Amendment's right to peacefully protest. So when Chris Cuomo says a little while ago, show me where in the Constitution it says you have to do it peacefully. You just got to read the thing, Chris. Anyways, fast forward a little bit here. Okay. So now they make a hard beeline left. Their left, our right, over to. Okay, well, now this is getting a little bit more interesting, isn't it? Now we have a group of individuals that are all being harbored by black umbrellas, and they're changing. They're changing from street clothes into all black garb. This is what I'm talking about. This is the element that I'm saying right now. My whole purpose of showing this video is to say to the peaceful protesters, y'all need to root this out. lest you become guilty by association yourself. Y'all need to start standing up against this stuff. Look, pause. You can literally see the lines being drawn right now. I mean, this is a perfect example of what's frozen on your screen. Over here, if you can see my mouse, on the right side, a bunch of peaceful protesters. There's a baby carriage right there. A bunch of peaceful protesters in street garb. I mean, an actual walled line of black umbrellas in black garb. I mean, this is what I'm talking about. I have an article that comes right after this story that indicates a plurality of voters, something to the extent of 70-something% of people polled that are Democrats said cancel culture has gone too far. And only 9% of people polled said that it has not gone far enough. That is the same underlying rot ideology that is forcing this right now. And it is very similar, I would presume, to the extent of polling data. If you were to ask, what percentage of y'all out here are supporting the violence going on? Probably this percentage. Probably the percentage that is taking advantage of the other groups right now that are not wanting this stuff to go on. But it's only them that could root this out. Either that or feds are going to start showing up in your town. We'll continue. I mean, black umbrellas changing into black clothes. This is the side of the story that I'm thinking y'all have not seen yet. And I'm really hoping the video image is good enough on y'all's side. Okay, so here, those white bags they just showed. Those white bags are filled with what you have been seeing: rocks, frozen bottles of water, canisters of stuff, canned goods that they're tossing, bricks, knives, everything else. Okay, so now what you just saw there, an actual line, peaceful protesters separating, Red Sea style split here, while these black umbrellas move through. And I would venture to say most of them probably have no idea what's going on. They're moving through this wooded area.
You're giving them a lot of credit to think that they don't have any idea what's going on, Grant. And that they're not working together. Because I would assume that they are.
And I hear you, man. And I hear you. And that's what
and if I were law enforcement, I would assume that those people right around them were there for protection.
And that's what's happening.
And you'd be right to assume that.
Yeah.
Because what else would you assume? Oh, yeah, those people are just changing into their black outfits because it's different now. You know,
right.
You know what they're doing?
Yeah.
They've been doing it for 55 days. All those people know exactly who those other people are.
Right. Now, granted, this is in Chicago, but what Shine said is very true. So these people back here, and you'll see here in just a second that some of them do take part. Let me just play this actually, instead of pausing. Some of these people back here, okay, so they're seeing the separation here. Maybe some of these people dressed in black. Okay, this right here. See what he just dumped out? A bunch of bottles of frozen water. So he dumped this out. People are picking it up, chucking. This is how this starts. This is how this stuff starts. So what you're not seeing over here on the right side of the screen, which we'll go to in the other video here in just a minute, on the right side of the screen where my mouse is, I think you can see my mouse moving here. Over here, that's obscured, your vision's obscured right now. This is where the police officers are lining up outside of this statue of Christopher Columbus, that they were just, the crowd moved upon them, dumped out a bunch of frozen bottles of water and started chucking. But again, the way that the optics of this look, and I'm trying to take these people at their face value, which is a problem that I have of giving people the benefit of the doubt. I think it's one of my greatest assets and one of my weakest assets as well. It's weird how something can be like that with humanity. One of your things you're best at that's great about you is also one of the things you're worst at and what's terrible about you. That I'm trying to give some of these people the benefit of the doubt, that they're actually marching for a cause that they believe in, that they want to see societal change, that they believe in criminal justice reform. I believe in criminal justice reform. I've devoted the entirety of my adult life to criminal justice reform, as has Shine. We believe in portions of what these people are trying to change as well. But the manner by which they're going about doing it is I don't have words for how wrong it is. So that's why I'm trying to take some of these people at their word as the video continues. You see a contingency of these folks. These folks. Look at this. Look at the rest of the people around them here. And this is now what it unfolded on. This is the scene that I'm pretty sure y'all have not seen yet. Or maybe you have. This is the scene that I'm pretty sure most mainstream media is not covering. This is where they're coming up, police officers. I don't know. And then this stuff unfolds. And now you're stuck in a situation that I talked about before. As this is playing out, let me read this to you one more time.
And the fireworks start going off too.
Yeah, right.
Man, it's just like a freaking video game, man. Tanks up front, DPS and healers in the back.
Right?
That's what they're doing. It's
the other part of the audience. This is what's so sticking with me so much. And this is where I'm genuinely trying to discern. Let me read this paragraph one more time from David Vorman over at Americans for Prosperity. Peaceful protest, free expression, and free assembly are foundational rights for all Americans, as well as essential catalysts for progress. America has real injustices to confront, and they are best overcome through peaceful means. We condemn the violence and destruction of property that Portland and other cities have endured. This is Chicago again. I'm pretty sure. Someone tell me if I'm wrong. David goes on to say at American Prosperity, but we also strongly believe that violence cannot be a justification to shut down peaceful rallies and harass peaceful protesters. Look at this dude's face right here. This guy's face fully encompasses what I would believe to be at least a sizable portion of the rest of the audience out here. His face is basically a stuck WTF face. Look at him here again as they zoom in. You'll see his face. What is happening? What is this? Do you see this guy? Dude, see the raised eyebrows? And maybe granted, I'm reading into this a lot, but to me, that's looking like, that's as if, what have I stumbled into? What have I just brought myself into here? And obviously this continues. It goes on. This is the other side. This is the video you have probably seen. And I don't know, depending on the source you're coming from, depending on where you might be, I don't know. Maybe you haven't seen this. 3 minutes left. This is where police officers just being pelted and pelted and pelted. PVC pipes. By the way, this one officer here grabs 2 water bottles in a PVC pipe within about 2 seconds of each other. Anyways, this is the side that you may have seen where I don't know. And I'll stop this here, Sean, because that basically delivers the entire point. Let me make sure I'm not missing anything else in here. Yeah, it just goes on to that same viewpoint. So I don't know, Sean. I mean, let me kick some Facebook comments if we're still live on Facebook, or at least I'll kick to the unified chat to see where people are coming from.
They kicked us off Facebook because we were showing what we're not supposed to, what you're not supposed to see, because you're only getting one side from everywhere, including the internet.
Yeah, we're still on YouTube though, so
yeah, we are. But
yeah.
I mean, here's the deal, Grant. If I'm in one crowd and there's another crowd out in front of me, like I'm in a crowd and there's another crowd out in front of me, and they're separated by an expanse. If I'm in a crowd and from 3 different places, people start throwing rocks and water bottles at me, would I be wrong to say I was at this thing and the crowd started throwing water bottles at me? Not a person or this person or that person. I would say that group of people,
right
over there, everybody over there, they were throwing rocks and water bottles. Now, I don't know who was, but that group was.
Mm-hmm.
Now, let's say there's one guy in the back holding a one of those red Antifa flags with the fist clutching the Gadsden flag snake.
Right.
And I'd say, okay, so there was a group of Antifa people throwing rocks and water bottles. Let's say it's only 10 out of 100. I would still say the crowd did it. And that and I would assume if they're standing next to someone with an Antifa flag, that they're all Antifa. Just like if I was in a crowd and someone saw me standing next to somebody with the stars and bars, they would say, well, there's that guy standing in a crowd of white supremacists or something. Like if I'm standing next to that flag, I'm guilty by association, right? I mean, that's the way I would be treated, I'm sure. Or anyone would. That's the way anybody would be treated. We're like putting our brain on pause to talk about these Antifa people.
Yeah.
We are just like getting rid of logic for a second. All those people were working together. And Antifa themselves says they do things like diversity of tactics. They will have the majority of people look like regular protesters. They have people who know how to move the crowd. So you have you have a regular protest, and all of a sudden some Antifa people get out front and they'll act like they're leading it, and they'll turn it away. They do it all the time. They've been doing it since Occupy Wall Street. All those things you saw are not organic. They plan these things. And people at protests, I don't know if you've ever done a protest. You just follow the people behind you. I've done them several times. You just follow the people, or the people in front of you. You just follow. Because
you assume somebody's organizing where they're going, right?
You assume someone knows. And just like sheep or or pigs running off a cliff. You all just go together.
Yeah.
And I don't know. To me, I've heard them say that they plan all this stuff. And I don't understand why people are like, well, it's only a few people. You don't know that. Those of you who are saying it's only a few people, you don't know. You don't know how organized it is. And really, a few people dedicated to a cause can get a lot of stuff done, as we tell you all the time on this show. A few people dedicated can do a lot working together. A lot.
That's true.
I mean, me and Grant are pretty smart. With 5 other people, we could disrupt a protest of thousands if we planned, because we're smart. We don't. We have better things to do with our time. And we're not trying to violently overthrow the U.S. government. So we got better things to do. We got other hobbies. But we're throwing in a lot of assumptions. There's a lot of things we do not know. And I would say that I'm more worried about what I don't know than what I do know. And I think that the federal government should move in if states and municipalities aren't willing to protect federal property. I really do. And especially when the state is helping them. If there are states and members of the local government that tell, and because I don't call these people even rioters, they're militia. That's my opinion. They're militia. They use guerrilla tactics. They are trying to overthrow institutions, government institutions. They're a rebel militia is what they are. And they're able to recruit people in real time because people just follow people at these protests and mob mentality, all that stuff. But they should, when the state is sponsoring these militias, the federal government has a duty. I'd even say the military has a duty, because it becomes state insurrection at that point. Like what's going on in Oregon right now, I believe when you have the governor and an attorney general, senators, and local people in the municipality backing these militias, trying to burn down a federal courthouse.
I mean, the mayor was out there right outside of it last night in Portland.
He's giving them cover. He's giving them cover. He's helping them do it, and he's trying to get the feds out. To me, it's the exact same as South Carolina and Fort Sumter that started the Civil War. You had a group of people who were not U.S. government people trying to kick U.S. government people out of a fort. And the state of South Carolina sanctioned that. And, and that's why it was a civil war, because the state sanctioned it. Does that make any sense? Like, it'd be one thing if it was just the rebels. And that's what I'm going to call them. They're a rebel militia is what they are.
Now, I will say, to be fair to, say, Mayor Lightfoot, who I get so confused with who these mayors are, but I'm fairly certain it's a mayor out in Chicago, right? Somebody in YouTube tell me if I'm wrong there. But to be fair to Mayor Lightfoot, she has been on record, and I have the CNN clip here somewhere saying as much in the show notes, that she has been on record saying any version of violence that's, I'm paraphrasing slightly, but saying any version of violence that's even similar to what you saw in Oregon, she's going to stamp down and shut down immediately. Now, whether that's just her retort for, saying here's the reason why we don't need federal troops sent from Trump, because we're going to take care of ourselves. I will say, for anything else, that's at least dynamically different rhetoric than you hear from the Portland leadership, like Shine is talking about. I mean, what Shine is talking about is when you have people that are openly endorsing some of the violence that are going on, or at least telling their law enforcement to stand down in place of it, then that's dynamically different than the mayor of Chicago coming out and saying, hey, if there's violence that erupts, we're going to shut it down. And here's what I'll end this whole thing with, what I started with as well. To some of the people that are obviously making the argument that, as I do in this morning, as I'm still trying to figure out, that it's just a small contingency of individuals that are setting off most of these problems. That may very well be true. And frankly speaking, I think there's a lot of video evidence to say that may very well be true. But if that's what's going on, just like I saw in this headline from The Hill, talking about a plurality of voters say cancel culture has gone too far, with less than 10% saying the cancel culture has not gone far enough. I think the cancel culture ideology is in some parts symptomatic of the exact same thing that we're seeing going on with some of these riots right now. It's the same type of ideology that's fueling and spreading all of it. And if it is true that less than 10% support that thing going on, then let's say you can extrapolate that to what's going on with the riot. So let's say that less than 10% support the violence that's going on. Not openly condemning that type of behavior, I believe, makes some complicit in it. And what I'm saying is exactly what Shine said before. Whether it be through cancel culture or violent riots, these things are stemming from the same regressive ideology. The plurality of people It is this plurality of people that disagree with it that are also involved. The plurality of people that are also involved in some of these marches going on, they are going to have to stand up and speak out against the vocal, violent minority in this. The vocal, violent minority that is dressed in all black garb, that is walking in with some of these things, that is actively looking to enact violence on police forces or somebody else. Otherwise, the plurality is going to be swept up by the entirety of all of it. That is to say, the entirety of all the march is going to be guilty by association, is going to be held accountable for the act of violence that may have been done just by a small portion of those there. If those people don't stand up and say something about it, when the blind lead the blind, everybody falls into the same hole. You understand what I'm saying? If those in the crowd don't want to be associated with this violence, then stop allowing yourself to harbor those elements of violence in there. Stand up for what is right. Protest against what is wrong, and never allow yourself to become the monster you are fighting. That's where I want to end with today. Stand up for what is right. Protest against what is wrong, but never allow yourself to become the monster that you are fighting, or even be associated with those that are trying to turn themselves into the same exact beast. Hey, as we're into the program here, I'll see if I can get caught up with some Facebook comments. Kelly just said, you take on a level of risk just by going out there to these protests. Yeah, that's true. Cody said, I was raised that even if you have done nothing wrong, if the people you are with have done wrong, you're to blame as well. Well, that's exactly how it works, right? Spars has said in Facebook, in YouTube, keep up the good work, guys. Oh, thanks. And Jessica told me in Facebook a while ago, you're too kind for your own good. With a heart emoji, it happens. I appreciate you.
Well, we're trying to figure out if it's moral or not to stop people from throwing projectiles at police and burning down federal buildings. While we're trying to work that out, a militia is going to take territory away from the United States with the help of people in state governments. So we can sit around and have our little libertarian style, with our monocles and our glass of whiskey and our cigars, go, I wonder, should the federal government, does it have jurisdiction, Niles? Does it have...
That's how they sound,
yeah, that's exactly it. While we're doing that, there are people trying to take power. They're not fighting for a cause. They're trying to take power, and they want it more than you do. And I'll leave you with that.
Hey, that's a good spot to end it right there. My name is Mr. Henry, David Shine Thompson. You've been listening to Real News all morning long. We will be back tomorrow doing it big. Love each and every one of y'all sincerely, for real. Message us directly. A bunch of folks have taken us up on messaging us directly recently. If you have any stories you want us to cover or anything else, love y'all. See y'all tomorrow.